Okay, this guy has a very unusual reaction to seeing the ghost of a cartoon bear in front of him. Juniors is a FNAF fan game that released on August 20th, 2022, created by Darrock and the Juniors team. I've been following this game for some time now, although I do not have an exact date on when it was announced due to the GameJolt page it has now not being the same one it started on. But let's just say, it's been a long time coming. Juniors as a game is meant to take FNAF back to its horror roots, similar to FNAF Plus, but with much closer attention put into the haunted aspect of these characters. You play as an investigator who comes across a spirit by the name of Paul Bear, who wants you to help get rid of the spirit inside of Juniors that wants to take his soul. This already brings up one big distinction that separates this game from the majority of FNAF games and fan games alike. Whereas usually either all or none of the animatronics are possessed, in this instance there's only one ghost in the building that hops between the different animatronics. Before I get into the main gameplay, I feel I need to talk about the elephant in the room, that being this game's production history. Oh, and before I forget, all the music you're hearing in this video was pulled from the GameJolt page. I do think the soundtrack is easily one of the best parts of the game. Suffice it to say, when I say the game was created by Darrock, I'm not lying, but I am omitting a bit of truth. The game's other lead developer, who will remain nameless, was involved in a major scandal in the fan game community and has since claimed to be leaving the fan game community entirely. Do I believe this? Not really. In these days, it's very easy to just whip up an alternate account and keep doing what you're doing, but they will no longer be going by the name they're most known for. That said, if it was as simple as one of the lead developers leaving, I might not have made this a section of the video. But I do want to point out that I have some major issues with how this game reached its finished state. A YouTuber by the name of Theft King made a couple videos on the topic, but essentially the unnamed lead dev reached out to him and gave him an early version of the game, with hopes to finish it and then quit the fan game scene. Essentially, he wanted to keep developing the game himself and then pawn it off and give his team all the credit. On the one hand, I respect that he's willing to let his team take credit for the work he's put in, because he knows he messed up in a big way. On the other hand, that does make Juniors more of his product, as opposed to letting the actual team he wants us to love put in the work to make it a success. It's conflicting, to be certain. For the sake of this video, I wanted to primarily congratulate the Juniors team for a job well done, while not allowing this unnamed dev to reap the rewards as well. As for the actual development of this game, it's worth noting in particular that this game was scheduled to release in June 2022, but due to the Pear incident coming to light, it was pushed back until August. That said, I'm still surprised just how rough this game looks if it was apparently on schedule to come out in June. There's definitely a lot of parts of this game that feel undercooked, unrefined, and all of that. I don't know what work the unnamed dev did to make it reach a finished state, but I really do think this was better left for his team to finish. It's sad when you play a fan game and you feel it had a bad production story. But with that out of the way, I think it's finally time to talk about something interesting and positive: the visuals. Visually speaking, Juniors is the greatest fan game I have ever seen. From a design standpoint, the environments, the aesthetics, it's all fantastic. I think I want to run through a couple of these character designs because they were definitely the selling point going into the game. Let's start with Paul Bear, the friendly spirit who we're fighting to save. His design is pretty simple, being a cartoon bear that appears polygonal in the Barrens. My only issue with Paul Bear's design is that since most of the Barrens is in black and white, he kinda looks like Brian Griffin. Now you can't unsee it, can you? The animatronics themselves are some of the most creatively designed from not just the fan game scene, but the entire community. My favorite design has to be the Mangle, but we'll talk about them later. Aside from Mangle, I'll have to give it to Chica and Bondee for a two-way tie, as these are both fantastic designs. Needless to say, they look shockingly realistic, especially in render images. In-game, they're very clearly 2D images of 3D models, little bit of Donkey Kong Country thing going on, but I digress. One common theme among these designs I can't get enough of is the flaps around the base of all the necks, which allow for the heads to be removed during the repair segment of the night. These flaps, along with all the folds and creases in the animatronics, make them look properly like skeletons in a suit. The only two these rules don't apply for are the Puppet and Balloon Baby. These two capture more of a porcelain doll creepiness, but to be honest, seeing these two in the repair segment, I just don't find them scary like the other animatronics. Aside from the characters, the background elements are off the walls, in your office anyway. For some odd reason, there's a lot of Chica merchandise here, and not even the Chica you're up against. They look more like Funtime or Glamrock Chica. Your main console areas are also really cool to look through, and they nail a kind of 80s aesthetic. That being said, I was incredibly skeptical of a lot of what you're now seeing. With a game whose entire appeal is in the graphics and style, it can leave a lot of room for weak gameplay because the entertainment factor is already there. The gameplay of Juniors consists of 3 different sections you must manage at all times. At the beginning of each night, you'll talk to Paul Bear and start your night with the screen displaying the status of each animatronic. These statuses will slowly tick down, so you'll need to call animatronics over to you for repairs. However, if you are stupid enough or unlucky enough to call an animatronic possessed by the ghost, it's game over. Your second system is the camera system, which allows you to observe a series of rooms any number of animatronics can enter at any time. This part of the game actually reminded me of Phasmophobia. It has that same vibe of observation and action. The clues that can alert you to a possession include flickering lights, ghostly handprints, camera movement, and a lost connection. Of all of these, the only one I regularly screwed up on was handprints, which I think is absolutely just the game design. One of the biggest problems with Juniors is a lack of explanation for new mechanics. In a game as complex as this one, they really should have opted for a phone guide to explain each mechanic in depth rather than have a quick blurb from Paul Bear. The last system, if you want to call it that, is the conveyor system. When you call an animatronic to you for repairs, they will take the conveyor belt. When they arrive, you have to remove a chip from their head and replace it, which will reset their timer. Running out of time on an animatronic is an instant game over, and happened to me a few times. By far the worst night of the game is night 3. This is the night that introduces handprints, and I cannot tell you how many times I died on this night. I'll tell you this, it was much more than the apparently ultra difficult night 6. Repeat this for 5 nights and you do what I would call winning a Five Nights at Freddy's game. But that's not all, folks. I'm going to very quickly get into spoiler territory here, so if you haven't played the game yet and would like to beat it for yourself, skip to this time seen on screen now. If you've made it past this sentence, I'm assuming you've beaten Night 6 and are thus part of the Cool Dudes Club. That, or you don't actually want to play the game, which is entirely understandable. I'll tell you, getting through Juniors is a roller coaster, and Night 6 is like going down the biggest drop and noticing a loose bolt on your cart. So Night 6 is a remake of FNAF 2. It's hype as shit. Here's a clip of me actually reacting in real time to getting to Night 6. Hype, 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 hype. Here's where my mistake comes into play. I actually didn't record myself beating Night 6, just losing. But here's like footage of me having actually beaten it. When I say it's a remake of FNAF 2, I mean like down to the mask mechanics, flashing Foxy with the light, winding the music box. It is a beat-for-beat remake, just without any of the toy animatronics. The night starts out at 10 PM, and for the first 4 hours, it's a pretty typical FNAF night, just with absurd difficulty. But at 2 AM, a screen pops up and you watch as the animatronics ride the conveyor belt to an unknown location where they're combined with various endoskeleton parts. The Mangle is born. Your goal now is different. There's no music box and no puppet to worry about, but instead you have 2 threats ahead of you. One is the aforementioned Mangle, who is monstrous to say the least. I love this design for the character, it's the scariest in the game, and that hallway roar gets me every time. The other threat is the ghost herself, who will appear on the cameras. If she gets in, she will steal your battery. Let me tell you, my victory was hard fought. I made it to 5:30 without letting Mangle or the ghost in. But then the ghost stole my flashlight battery. Defenseless from the main hall, I sat and waited with the mask on. I was lucky enough that the Mangle only ever attacked from the vents for the last 30 seconds. I honestly don't think I'll ever forget that feeling of relief and unearned victory. The best part was that this was my first attempt at this fight, and by all means I should have lost. But luck was on my side just this once. By the way, all the footage you're looking at, I had to go back and record another attempt at Night 6, one which I lost due to Balloon Baby stealing my batteries. At the end of Night 6, you get the big reveal that the game is a prequel to FNAF 2, and the character you've been playing as is Jeremy Fitzgerald. On the one hand, yeah, I kinda expected this game to go the route of being a FNAF 2 prequel, since Juniors is often theorized to be the FNAF 2 location. But on the other hand, it just leaves more questions than answers. Both Paul Bear and the ghost go completely unexplained. Maybe there's an explanation if I beat the full 20 mode, but I do not care enough to do that. Otherwise, there are absolutely no ties back to the original FNAF story, which honestly is alright. I think I'd appreciate Juniors more as a standalone story than if it were a part of the main FNAF timeline. There was an attempt, but it didn't quite make the cut in my opinion. So with Night 6 behind me, that left the extras ahead of me, those being some behind the scenes images and the extra shifts mode. The extra shifts mode actually has an alternate mode called Seniors, which I might play at another time if people want to see that. As for custom night itself, it's really nothing special. You can't play a Night 6 custom night here, which, to be fair, just play FNAF 2 at that point, but the main mode itself is still fun, and it can get frustratingly difficult. One unique thing about this game is that raising the animatronics AI does not actually make them more aggressive, they just move around more frequently. Raising the ghosts AI will make the game more difficult, however. All of the preset challenges are just raising the difficulty of every animatronic by small increments. There's no real sense of identity here. One thing you can turn on is no errors if you're into paying for your mistakes. But outside of extra shifts, there's an extras mode I kind of love. We get a lot of great renders, behind the scenes info, but my favorite section is definitely this big folder of fan art. One of these, by the way, was made by Otis Laputas, the developer of Bondee's Barnyard, and you should check it out on GameJolt, link in the description. But that's just about the last of it when it comes to Juniors. Did I enjoy it? Very much so, I'd say, although my first impressions weren't great. If I had to grade this game, I'd say it's about a 7 or 8 out of 10. The pieces are there, and it looks pretty, but this is very much a game that was not ready to come out. The repair segments especially look incomplete, and the cutscenes are incredibly glitchy and laggy. I would say hold your breath for an updated version of the game, but it seems that the unnamed lead dev is handing off the updates and patching process to yet another member of the pair. I debated actually saying this guy's name since he's maintained his innocence pretty much throughout all of this, but I decided to omit his name as well since I don't want people giving him any credit either. So where does that leave Juniors? From an aesthetic and concept standpoint, Juniors is completely unmatched in the fan game scene. I'd say it definitely surpasses even some FNAF games. I think it overall looks better than FNAF 4, Sister Location 3, I could go on. But it all comes apart in the details, the glitches, and the production. It's sad to see this game as kind of a two-faced beast, but that's just how it is. There were a ton of good ideas that just never reached their full potential in this game. Would I recommend Juniors? It's hard to say. I downloaded the game partially out of morbid curiosity, and partially because I wanted to make a video covering it. But if someone asked me would I recommend the game, I'd have to tell them to be aware of who made it first. Be aware that there will probably never be another FNAF fan game quite like it. Be aware that the game is not polished, but still gorgeous. Be aware that there is an evil inside of Juniors, not just in the game's story, but in the game's code itself. And be aware, you may even walk away from Juniors liking it. I'm DMuted. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share around. Peace.